Tyler, last week when you were away, we got some news from Volkswagen that caused QuantumScape stock to absolutely pop. The stock went up like 40+% in a single day when Volkswagen confirmed some good news that QuantumScape had shared before. I made a video, talked about all of that, and went into some detail on it and tried to put that in context. But you and I wanted to do another video today, taking a look at not just QuantumScape, but also the broader advanced battery tech companies that are out there, what's going on in the space, and how investors should be thinking about it. You ready to talk a little bit about QuantumScape and beyond?
One of my favorite subjects. Let's go.
Let's do it. I'm Jason Hall. This is Investing Unscripted. This video is sponsored by The Motley Fool. If you're looking for even more great stock ideas, go to our special link. Go to fool.com/unscripted. The Motley Fool is going to give you its 10 best stocks to buy right now. Okay, Tyler, the news last week confirmed some things that we already knew with QuantumScape. So this is the battery startup that's working on solid state batteries. They've done a good bit of internal testing. Last year, they started sending samples to their OEM vehicle partners, third parties, some testing results that they got back on one particular sample. So it was a couple of commenters on the YouTube video I made clarified, and I was speaking quickly, and I wanted to stress that it was a single sample. I said it was a single cell. It's a 24-layer cell. These are A samples, so it's coming off of their manufacturing equipment. The point is, they had one sample that did like bonkers well, at the equivalent of 300,000 miles of usage on it and mileage usage based on 1,000 cycles, and still retained 95% of its capacity. It was wildly good, but it was, again, a single sample. So we know where things are with QuantumScape from other videos that we've done, Tyler. They have roughly $1 billion in cash and short-term investments on their balance sheet, tons of money, no debt, plenty of money to continue to fund R&D, start with some initial ramp up. Volkswagen's a big partner with them, equity investor. They have a joint venture, so we know VW is going to be one of its partners for scaling up its manufacturing. That's only going to bridge part of the gap to get to manufacturing, so we know there's more that it needs to do. So again, that's the state with QuantumScape. I want to talk a little bit about Solid Power. I think is a good one that I've done videos with before. I don't remember if you and I have. If we have, it's been a long time, but it's definitely time to take another look at Solid Power.
Yeah. So I think we're looking at it in terms of the competitive landscape of like where, if we had a check in of like, where are the solid state or the next generation of automotive batteries headed right now? And based on what I read into, if you look at Solid Power's presentations and financials, and as well as, look, I need to mention it too, because I think we've mentioned it before, but Toyota is internally developing its own. They're another one of the, I guess you could say, larger kind of players in this. And there's going to be a lot of other startups, and I'm sure that we're missing a couple. It's privately owned.
A lot of research institutions, Tyler, are working on this too. So it's not just happening in commercial enterprise, it's happening in the institutional setting too.
And for good reason too. Like you said, with the testing samples that QuantumScape sent to Volkswagen, if this works, this is transformational in terms of battery tech being used for mobility. Lighter, safer, faster charging times, longer range, like basically everything that automotive manufacturers want out of batteries today is what they saw in this one sample from QuantumScape.
And one of the key things about QuantumScape too is that they're targeting materials that are easily available, readily available now, and that there's a supply chain already in place for. So that's another thing that they're working on too. Okay, let's swing over to Solid Power. I want to share this first because we talk about QuantumScape, Volkswagen invariably comes up. The thing is that Volkswagen is only one of the half dozen or so OEM partners that QuantumScape has in place, including one pure play EV company. There's a lot of speculation out there who that is. I'm not going to touch on the speculation. This is Solid Power, and these are three of their key partners, BMW and Ford, two companies that compete directly with Volkswagen and a lot of Volkswagen subsidiary brands like Audi and Porsche. And then you have SK, which may not be as familiar. This is a battery manufacturing company. All three of these are equity investors as well as partners that want to have some share of the technology. I've got one more slide I want to share, Tyler. This is a differentiator in what Solid Power is trying to do versus QuantumScape. QuantumScape developing its own proprietary technology for batteries, but also manufacturing process, manufacturing equipment to actually deliver it. You have some of that with Solid Power. But another thing Solid Power is trying to do, and this I think ties to the SK partnership, is producing electrolyte that it will sell to battery manufacturers. So it's looking to help use this as a way that it can leverage its IP, the thing that it's trying to develop, and then sell it to other manufacturers that can use it just to scale up capacity more quickly. In a way, Tyler, this is one of those ways to bypass we don't have enough money. Our stock's $1.40 a share. Secondary offerings are going to be tough. Interest rates, raising capital from debt to build manufacturing facilities might be a challenge. We've got our partners that maybe they can help us some too. But why don't we make this one thing and then sell it? And then the people that have the money to build the big expensive factories to make the batteries, they can just buy this really high margin stuff from us, the electrolyte, and then we can make good money on that. And then we can also start scaling up cell production too, using the cash flows from the electrolyte is one of the ways that we build our business bigger.
Yeah, it's an idea that makes sense. It's a little bit harder to understand, but at least on the tech side, on the advancement side, they seem a little, we'll call them probably 6 to 9 months behind. Earlier, I think in the third quarter this year, they announced that they too had sent a testing sample to some of its partners, but we have not yet heard back in terms of the results of those tests versus not only QuantumScape's announcement of it, we've also got Volkswagen's now. So we'll see if Solid Power's new venture into these new cells actually works. That's where we stand here. So they're a little bit behind, and financially they're much, much smaller in terms of their cash runway and all that stuff. But like you said, look, if they can monetize some of their existing stuff, maybe they don't need to raise as much capital to do it. And then there's just the component of the equity partners. I think you and I were talking about this before we got started. And I think a lot of investors cling on to this idea that QuantumScape has Volkswagen's backing, which means it's almost treated like they're a made man kind of thing, where it's, if they have a big equity backer, then clearly they're headed in the right direction. Maybe, yes, you absolutely need these partnerships because you need to prove that you can sell something viable to an automotive. But these automotive companies are not going to go to the mat for these businesses. Let's be very clear here to measure and temper our expectations. If those tests didn't quite test out the way that they did, Volkswagen probably would have easily cut bait. Yeah, they have a $300 million investment in it through equity, but let's put that into context here. Over the past 12 months, Volkswagen had $14.9 billion in operating cash flow. So like 2% of 1 year's operating cash flow out the door. That's a rounding error in its financial statements.
It is a very small amount of money. And I think that's really important when we think about these businesses. And there's another aspect of it too, is because we always think this is the biggest concern. So I'm going to pull out the investing toolbox here. And this is what I want people to take away from this part of the conversation is we use these factors. Like we think about QuantumScape and say, oh, Volkswagen is a JV partner and they are a pre-IPO investor. And we'll look at Solid Power. They've got Ford and they've got BMW. That's what could go wrong. We use them as things to reinforce our bias, our confirmation bias, right? That this is going to go right? It's a thing that says it's going to go right. It is a thing that supports the potential for it to go right. It's a better way to think about it. Because if you think about, look at the e-space, Tyler, broadly. This is, I think, can be the thing to prove our point. Look at the EV space broadly. Think about how many deals have we heard about that Amazon and UPS,
Frito-Lay,
Walmart, and all of these other companies have done with these EV startups for electric trucks, dozens and dozens of them. And writ large, the EV startup industry has lost 70, 80% of its value over the past couple of years. Just because there's a big financial backer doesn't guarantee survival for these companies, much less a promise of big returns for retail investors. These companies are simply spreading their capital around to seed the market for potential technologies that they can leverage in the future. For a company like Volkswagen, the transformation that they are trying to go through with EVs is the biggest fundamental transformation that this company has probably ever gone through since post-World War II. I can promise you QuantumScape ain't their only bet, not even close. So retail investors shouldn't expect that it is any more than they should for Ford and BMW to be counting on Solid Power is their horse, right? It's not their only horse that they're betting on.